Welcome back. We are Saturday, meaning it's your second day of the Moot. You've successfully, I hope, passed the first day, and you will very likely have gained your first experiences. I'm pretty sure that this is not your first time to come against another team. You will very likely have competed against another team in a pre-moot or maybe even unofficially in a practice round before. However, what's different between the actual competition and any pre-moot or unofficial round is that on average, the Moot, the real competition, is a lot more international. As a result, on average, there are always exceptions, but on average, at least some of the arguments you will hear when you are at the real competition, at the big international thing, are going to be very novel to you. You will not have come across them before. I've noticed this over and over again, and what I'm telling you now is also based on a survey I made before. It was confirmed by about 70% of participants who said they realized that once they moved from the regional rounds a step higher to the real competition, that they encountered a lot more arguments they had not heard before. This is normal. It's normal because different cultures have different approaches. And the closer you are geographically, the more likely you come across an argument. And the further a team is away, the less likely you are, even in these times of internet, to come across their argument. So all of this raises the question, what should you do when there is an argument you have not heard before? And above all, is there anything you should do with respect to your own pleadings? Should you change them? Should you keep them the same? Or should you, I don't know, just do something completely different? This is what I'm going to speak about in today's video. There are two ways where you can come across new arguments. The first one, and the most obvious one, of course, is that you come across those arguments as you hear them as the opposing team is making this argument. That's the more general rule. The other one is you know against which team you're going, of course, and you review the written brief of that team. So again, two possibilities, either in the course of the pleadings or beforehand. Now, how should we address that? Let's start with the more common way, or I should say easier way. You see the pleadings in advance, namely the written pleadings. A few words of caution. First of all, when I work with moot court competition teams, I always tell them that they should trust their own arguments. You should have enough trust in your own arguments, and you should not change your pleadings too much, if at all, based on written submissions you have seen before. This is also because when it comes to the written stage, a few teams, of course, will make different arguments than they actually do in the oral phase. Why is that? There are several reasons. First, as you have probably experienced, during the written stage, usually you never have enough time. So it's always those last-minute submissions, and trust me, it's no different in real life. But you're simply not capable of putting in everything you want to. So when you see a brief likely the arguments that the team is going to make will be different. Second reason, a lot of teams are refining their arguments when it comes to the oral stage. So even if they have made the very same argument in the written stage, it will be different when it comes to the oral stage. Third reason, I have heard several times from teams that they don't put all arguments into the written brief because they are worried that if they do that, the argument will get stolen for the final rounds. So to sum it up, it's for this reason that when you review the brief of another team, of the team you're going against, you cannot necessarily gain a lot of information from it. Be very cautious. And again, as I tell the teams I work with, and as we also advise in our book, Mooting to Win, we always tell the teams we work with, trust in yourselves and trust in your own arguments. There is one difference, one peculiar point in difference to what I just said. It's that your team is very large. It's not only composed of 4 people, but ideally a lot more, meaning you have a lot of time because the work can be split up and separated among your team. If you have a large team and if you have people who are solely dedicated to doing research, a lot of teams do that, you will have the possibility to assign your researchers on reviewing the arguments made by the opposing team. And what they can do, if they are good and if they are fast, they can simply go through all the written brief and make a 1-page summary highlighting any peculiar points. Now, when I say highlighting peculiar points, all they do is that they find out if there is anything that's unusual that they point out to the speakers in this 1-page summary. It's a 1-page summary because you don't want to spend too much time on it when you are the speaker. You don't want to go through a 15-page explanation of the arguments made in the written brief. You only want to have peculiar points, and it should be very brief. Now, the advantage of this 1-page summary is that you will be in a position to already anticipate something that may be unusual without spending too much time on it. So this is the only exception or the only further differentiation, I should say, in comparison to the other rule. Now, what about those arguments you hear while going against another team during the pleadings? Should you adopt them for later rounds? Again, a word of caution. Keep in mind that it's very difficult to adapt in the middle of the competition. This is all very stressful, and there will be a lot of influences from all sides. You will probably hear new arguments, you will probably see new styles, you will probably get feedback you have not received before, because just as is the case for not hearing that many different arguments when you participate in regional pre-moots, it's also the same with the feedback. The average arbitrator from South America, just by way of example, is probably going to put a different emphasis than the average arbitrator from East Asia. So keep in mind that it's going to be very, very difficult to adapt in the middle of the competition. We would not throw overboard the arguments you have built over months and weeks just because you come against a different team and your arguments didn't work extremely well. So be careful there. Also keep in mind that it may simply be a coincidence. Sometimes arguments go really well with arbitrators, not because they are so excellent, but because it just works. It's a coincidence. Keep in mind also that the way you present your arguments is hopefully your style and not someone else's style, and that it's very hard to imitate. As I said at the outset of this video, we believe that it's much, much more important to trust in your own arguments than it is to adapt right away. This is a bit a differentiation of what we say in our book, because one of our advice is adapt or die. So if you have read the book, then do not get confused. Yes, we say adapt or die because you have to adapt to every single situation in the pleadings, but this is only for small matters. Your overall outline should not change. It should be the same. So do trust in your arguments, and unless you realize that consistently they do not work, you know, the feedback from all arbitrators over several rounds is that the arguments are simply bad, then consider changing them, but do not throw them overboard right away. The second rule we discuss in our book, Mooting to Win, is just because everyone makes the argument doesn't mean you should not do it. And you may wonder that this is a contradiction because it's somehow the opposite of what we said first, what I explained initially. Well, it's not really a contradiction. Why is that? The point here is, the point in our book, that you should not leave out an argument which is really great just because you have heard another team make it. In the course of working with moot court competition teams, I've realized that many of them take the view that their argument needs to be unique. It needs to be something really, really special. And if it's not really special, then the teams do not want to make it, at least some of them. Now, two things there. First of all, by the time you get to the global rounds or to the real competition, very likely you will not hear any new arguments. The argument will have been made before. It's extremely hard to make an argument that is completely novel. Second rule, keep in mind that the creativity of your argument is not necessarily what makes a great argument. You can make a good argument on the substance, and if you present it in an excellent way, if you manage, you know, through everything that all those people out there who have given you advice have told you should do, if you do all that, then a good argument is going to be much, much more compelling and convincing than your very creative argument, which you do not present in a compelling way, is going to be. So keep in mind that creativity and being novel is A, almost impossible, B, it's not anything. This is also something we know from business. I'm telling you this because as many moot court competition participants forget, when you want to work as a lawyer, especially in arbitration, you need to know about business and you need to understand about business. You need to know your client's business and you need to know about business overall. So the analogy to business here, just as an excursus, is that you have the first movers and then you have the followers. So the first mover is the one making the innovation, you know, inventing something. The followers are those who copy, who imitate. Don't see this as something that's necessarily against the law. That's absolutely not the point here. Copying just means you do the same someone else has done before. It's not that you illegally use a patent or something. So the probably most important and best known follower of companies that exist out there is Apple. Everyone thinks that Apple is doing all its products before anyone else has done them, but that's absolutely not true. Almost all very famous Apple products have existed before Apple made them. And Apple is just an early adapter and a follower and makes those products much better. But it's not that they came up with them originally. That's the success story of Apple. So if you compare this, or if you bring this back to moot court competitions, you could say that Apple is the one who has good arguments. They are not completely new. They are not really creative in that sense, but Apple presents them in the perfect way, in a really good way. And that's why Apple has the reputation it has today. And you have other companies which are the ones with the novel arguments. They are the ones who come up with the product, but you've probably not even heard about them. So compare this. Do you want to be the innovator who has done it for the first time, but no one else knows about it, no one else is buying it? Or do you want to be the early adapter, Apple, the follower, who does it really well? I think the answer is obvious. And the same applies to mooting. Finally, a last note on making arguments. By all means, do make sure that you only make arguments that you are 100% comfortable with. Do not make an argument just because you see another team do it and you think it's great, but you haven't fully thought it through, you don't understand it 100%, or you're not comfortable with that argument just because it's not you. A story we discuss in Mooting to Win is from several years back. I think it was in 2011. Probably then you were not even in high school. It's a long time ago, but I've been involved in moot court competitions for a long time. Back then in 2011, the arbitration rules for the Vismoot were the CAM rules, the Camera Arbitrale di Milano, the Milan Chamber of Commerce. So these rules back then existed, of course, in English, because else you couldn't use them for the Vismoot. And they also existed, of course, in the main language, in the original language, which is Italian. Now, some of the Italian teams were able to find a discrepancy in the Italian rules on the one hand and the English rules on the other hand. And they used that discrepancy to their advantage. Now, during a pre-moot, I heard this argument for the first time, and I had the privilege of spending 1 year of studies in Italy, so I speak Italian, and I was very impressed with the argument because it was very compelling. I think the drafters of the moot had really not thought about it, and how should they? They would most likely only have read the English version and not the Italian version. By the time we arrived at the real competition, the Vismoot in Vienna, a lot of teams were making this argument, and not only Italian teams, but also teams from around the world. Now, probably this goes well if you come across a tribunal where no one is speaking Italian. If you are unfortunate to come across a tribunal where there is at least one person speaking Italian, I guarantee you that this person would have a question, because this person wants to fully understand the argument you're making, and very likely that person speaking Italian will be intrigued by this argument. At least that's what I did. And I was not only intrigued and interested, I also pointed out that it was not entirely clear, at least in my opinion, that this discrepancy existed. So when this one team made the argument, I asked them a very specific question on it, and they couldn't answer it in any way. They said, I'm sorry, I don't speak Italian. Now, that's the prime example of making an argument that you don't fully understand, because you cannot make an argument on Italian language when you don't speak that language. And of course, all three arbitrators, not just me, but all three of them, deducted a lot of points for that, because ultimately this is cheating in a way. It's cheating in a sense that you're making arguments that you don't fully understand, and you should not do that. So please keep that in mind when you adapt your arguments in the course of the competition. Again, I wish you all the best for the next matches, and I'll be back tomorrow with more tips.